Blumhouse Productions has a brand new supernatural horror film that released in theaters last week, and I finally had the opportunity to watch it and review it here on the channel, and let me tell you, it might be one of the funniest films I have seen this year. Let's get into the review. Welcome back, film fans. It is Brad from Let's Be Real Brad. I talk about movies, TV shows, and other movie-related content. So if that sounds super awesome, then be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and ring that notification bell so I can always see you in a new video. Imaginary is the newest supernatural horror film that is produced by Blumhouse Productions and distributed by Lionsgate, and it is directed, co-written, and co-produced by Jeff Wadlow, as the film stars DeWanda Wise in the lead role. So going into seeing Imaginary, I was not excited to see this movie at all, and if I was, it was for the wrong reasons, as the trailers for this film were absolutely atrocious, with the awful Imagination song that just played the whole entire time, and it was used so annoyingly, and the trailer just made this seem like to be one of the most unscary horror films that's ever been made, and that's kind of what this movie was. This was one of the most unscary, wide release horror films I have ever seen, to the point where people in my auditorium were straight up laughing at this film, as this movie is taking itself extremely serious throughout the entire runtime, and it is just so stupid and unscary that I just could not believe I was watching this film. I mean, I knew this movie was not going to be that good when I walked into my auditorium and I see a bunch of like little kids in the auditorium. Like, they can't see this, it's a PG-13 horror film, but like, you know, this movie's just not going to be that good, and it definitely wasn't. So let's just get right into the negatives with this one, and we definitely have to talk about the horror. As I've already been talking about, this movie is not scary at all. This movie doesn't even try to scare you. Like, it has those typical cliched jump scares, but when they do the jump scares, it's not even like, whoa, that's scary. Like, it's just a teddy bear that's just sitting there. Like, there's not even like a scary noise or a face that's looking at you like, you know, the Conjuring universe does. Like, it's just nothing. So after the first jump scare that's really loud, you just don't jump at any of the other ones. Like, I don't think jump scares are scary. I jump because the noise is just literally loud and you just can't help but jump out of your seat. It's a loud noise that you're not expecting. But in this movie, I just sat completely still. The horror in this movie is just so bad. And I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody, because the director of this film, Jeff Wadlow, isn't a favorite of mine. I mean, I don't know the guy personally, but the films that he has directed, like Kick-Ass 2, Blumhouse's Fantasy Island, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, and he also wrote Bloodshot, which are all awful, awful movies. And so he's worked with Blumhouse before, and Truth or Dare and Fantasy Island are absolutely hilariously bad. So I knew that this was probably not going to be so good, and it was also hilarious as well. I just don't think that Jeff Wadlow is very good at directing horror films, or maybe even directing in general, because the horror in this film is directed in the most childish and most boring way possible that I just couldn't be scared if I tried. I mean, if you look at the film that he's also directed, like Fantasy Island and Truth or Dare, which are so hilarious, it has all the same issues that could be sort of an interesting concept, but they're just so goofy, and it's not trying to be goofy, that it ends up just being so hilariously bad. One of the other massive issues with this film is with the performances here, as DeWanda Wise is really bad in this film, and I do think she's trying, so I'm not really gonna crap on her. Like, she is trying to give a good performance, but the performance is just not great here. I haven't seen her in anything else besides one of the Jurassic World movies that I thought she was fine in, but I just thought her performance was really lacking and just a little too over the top for what this movie is, and just not selling me here. But I do feel that this is based on the director here, as he is just not getting good performances out of his actors. I mean, it shows in the other movies he's directed, so I really can't blame some of the actors here, but one of the performances in particular that I'm not going to go too deep into because she is a child and that's not really fair for me to do, but I do have to point out Piper Braun. Her performance in this movie is just laughably bad. I'm sorry to say it, but there's that one part in the trailer where she's like, I don't want to play with you anymore. It's just so hilariously awful that it is just really sad to watch that a child has to be put into a situation and set up to fail because she's not given the great direction that she should be given to be able to perform the scene. So I'm not going to blame this on her at all, but it's still something to be noted, especially because she is literally one of the main characters in the film. She literally interacts with Chauncey the bear. So it does need to be said. This is also one of the most boring looking films I have seen this year. And there hasn't been a lot of movies that have come out, but the cinematography of this film is so boring. All the shots in this movie are all so uninteresting and flat and uninspired. It just feels like it was shot with like 2 or 3 takes and they just called it a day. Like, I'm not trying to be so negative with this film, but it just feels like they didn't care about this movie at all, or there's just a lack of talent. I don't know what it is, but it's such a boring looking film that I just did not care about this movie at all. I was just completely uninterested the entire time while watching this film. There is a certain moment in this film where everything about the film completely changes and it becomes like a science fiction fantasy type movie at one point that I did not expect, and that was definitely one of the most hilarious parts of the movie. And that is really where the movie actually starts to get going and not just the trailer footage that we've literally already seen. But like, the production design of it is just so bad. It looks so fake. You can clearly tell where everything is supposed to look like with the fog and some of the, background. I know it's supposed to be like this dreamlike world, but man, it looks so bad. And I know this is a low budget movie around $10 million, but like, it shouldn't look this bad. It really shouldn't. It was embarrassingly bad. And I know that they were trying to make something cool, but it just did not work for me. One of the biggest sins that this film commits is how boring this movie is. I've sort of mentioned it already, but the pacing of this movie is so slow and uninteresting that everything that you have seen in like the first half of this movie is like every other cliched, wide release horror film of this type, like a Blumhouse PG-13 horror film. It is everything that you saw in the trailer. It goes exactly the same way you think it's going to go, and it's just so boring. There are a few tiny subplots that happen with certain characters in this movie that are just so ridiculously dumb, especially this one boy that shows up in like 2 scenes, and it was so stupid and over the top that it didn't fit the movie at all, and then the kid never shows up again. Spoiler, I guess. Like, it was just so dumb that I don't know why it was in it. It was just to add filler to this movie. And that is also one of the other big issues with this movie. This movie feels way too long. Like, the movie's not an hour and a half like it should be. It's like an hour and 45, hour and 50, which I don't understand because this is a very simple, straightforward, supernatural horror film that you've seen 100 different times that you could probably get a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 extra show times for to make more money. This felt so long, and I was just waiting for this movie to end because there's really not all that much happens. And then when this film ends, it ends exactly the way you think it's gonna. It doesn't have a true resolution to it. And it just feels like it's trying to cash in on another idea from Blumhouse to make cheaply and to make money. And that's all this movie is, because they keep giving this guy so many projects that make money and the talent is just not there apparently, because every movie he's directed that I've seen is just awful. So overall, film fans, Imaginary is one of the most hilariously awful movies I've seen so far this year, as it's filled with horrendous performances, terrible cinematography, horrendous horror that was easily some of the most unscary horror moments I've ever seen in the film. And I don't care if it's PG-13 or not, because there have been good PG-13 horror films like The Ring or Drag Me to Hell and so on and so forth. This was just a really uninspired and stupid horror film about this stupid bear that is a imaginary friend of the girl and all this stupid crap within this movie. I just did not care about it. But if you're looking for a really good laugh, or if you just have an A-list membership and you already can just pick a movie to go see it because you pay for part of that membership, then might as well just go see it. Like, who cares? Like, it's just a dumb, stupid horror film that teenagers are just gonna go and see. It'll probably make its money back. By any means, I'm giving Imaginary a 3 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for checking out this review. As I want to know below in the comment section, have you seen Imaginary, and are you planning on checking it out after seeing this review? Let me know all of your thoughts. I would love to hear all about it. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video.